Part 2 saw us cruising along down Nordeer's Neck for the first time, and then a lengthy ride all the way out to Maclear. I see it's got a new name, but we'll keep it as Maclear. And then from Maclear on to Ugie, again looking for a place to refuel. Maclear, no 95 octane, and Ugie the same. Landed up having to deviate all the way to Elliot and then come back to Bastervoet, which we struggled to find, as there were no markings from this side at least. Safe to say we didn't plan this terribly well. I think looking at a map, everything looked relatively close, and going from Tennerhead down Nordeers to Maclear, Maclear to Ugie, and Ugie to Bastervoet looked pretty plain sailing. But we didn't know what the roads looked like, we didn't know how long it was going to take us, and truth be told, I would hate to do this trip again, in the sense of this whole lengthy roundabout trip to Bastervoet. Definitely better ways to optimize this, but so we learn. We hadn't seen the place before, well, not most of it at least, and so from a first time perspective we made a few bad calls. This was us aimlessly cruising down towards Elliot looking for Bastervoet. The Bastervoet turnoff actually was quite a way behind us, but nonetheless we had to go to Elliot first, refuel and head back. We got onto the road pretty late, and initially took a wrong turn because there is a little turn-off which has a very old sign that is terribly faded and you can't really make out a name, but that is indeed the route to Bastervoet Pass. As much as it hadn't rained recently, there was plenty mud along this route, nice pools, and exceptionally slippery, very odd clay-like mud.
Straight through on left. More memoirs of Tim there. Oh, you're at the nice place to have to stop. Can't actually worry about what is actually coming.
Let me put it this way, if it were to rain, or rain the day before trying Bastervoet, I'll just call it a day. Wouldn't bother going. I can only imagine how terrible this mud is when the entire road is wet. I just think you'd struggle for traction. Actually, I've seen videos where guys are slipping and sliding all over the place at the start.
I cannot see the line. Yeah.
If nothing else, the late afternoon cruise up Bastervoet at least provided for some beautiful scenery with the sun just dropping behind the mountain.
That's the awesome bridge.
We're really pushing to squeeze this pass in with the remaining daylight. Quickly running out of daylight and trying to get through the more easier sections as quickly as physically possible, anticipating some more muddy pools further up the pass. We had spoken to guys about 2 nights before who said there were huge holes at some stage. They never quite explained where, but that's what we were anticipating.
Middle.
Can't stress how valuable the comms were on the bike, being able to relay messages to the rider behind, also just to be able to communicate. In the open like this, we at times had exceedingly good range. Just made life exceptionally simple.
No, don't stay anywhere. It's just a hell of a bump. Watch out for it.
What I may not look at on the video, those bumps were pretty extreme and also very hard to gauge how steep they were on the other side or how deep a pocket was on the other side. Almost time for the happy music to end.
Checking depth. It's about 5 centimeters deep. I think it's got water on it.
Sort of accurate. Radiator fluid leaking from a hole in the top of the radiator.
What does that look like? Is it durable?
Yeah, it is. I think your line is better than mine.
With only 15 minutes before sunset, according to GPS, we had to make the call to abort. The 850, as soon as it reached 98 degrees, would start to leak through the hole, and that happened pretty frequently while we were climbing. If we had to try and get it through mud sections, it would have simply just boiled over. Also, we had to struggle to get the 1250 out over the top, turn it around and bring it back through the mud.
I've been struggling to stay below 92.
While the footage looks pretty bright, it was getting dark rather rapidly and visibility was dropping quite quickly. It was becoming difficult to spot mud pools as well as ditches. However, with the bike trying to overheat around every corner, I had to try and cruise down in at least third gear to keep it cool. It was also becoming evident that I had short-term memory loss, forgot which way I'd come through the mud, and when going back landed up taking a slightly different route, almost to my detriment. I was pretty convinced I was through until that happened. Suddenly the bike just did a hard left turn. Landed up having to crab all the way out. The headlight sort of gives away how dark it really was. Camera unfortunately picks up a lot of light, which gives the impression that everything was very visible. But what happens around the next corner shows that there was no way of seeing what I was riding over.
Yeah. Tim, I'm in the wrong place. Do not go right.
There was a very disconcerting little adjustment. Suddenly the bike just hooked a hard right. Lucky enough, just managed to control it to miss the tree that had been cut down, that you sort of can hear in the background getting hit by the bike, and then stop just short of the barbed wire fence.
Just lean back. Stand. Okay. I'm in the left lane. Again, the left lane's deep, so be careful, be careful. Second one's deeper than the first. Just go and stand and give a bit of momentum.
Now is probably as good a time as any to explain what transpired with the radiator. But before going there, I just want to reiterate that I think the 850 GSA is an absolutely underrated bike. I think people are all too quick to jump to the 1200 and 1250, dismissing the 850 out of hand. But this bike is certainly a brilliant tourer, but when it gets off-road, the bike is amazing. That aside, back to the radiator. It turns out the 850s and more than likely 750s as well have a design flaw in the radiator. This is where the radiator mounts tear away from the radiator, forming a small hole. This tends to happen anything between 12 and 15,000 kilometers. Now, design flaws on a relatively new design are to be expected, but how the manufacturer goes about rectifying those issues is a cause for concern. They have produced a replacement part knowing full well about the issue, but rather than issuing a recall, they opt to wait until the customer runs into mechanical difficulties and then replace the radiator under warranty. In my case, I was fortunate. I was able to get home with the bike in the condition it was in and get it back to the dealership and have the radiator replaced about a week later under warranty.
I'm just waiting for Tim to direct to find the hotel. Which way?
We finally made it back to the Rhodes Hotel at around just after 8 that evening, making it yet again almost another 12-hour day on the bike.